Welcome to For the Love of Lincoln County, a podcast where we bring you everything on leadership, entrepreneurship, and community impact. Presented by the Lincoln County Chamber of Commerce. I'm your host, Jamie Wright of Wright Davo Insurance. We're coming to you from right here in Newark, Ohio.
Whether you're a job seeker or a business with staffing needs, Ohio Means Jobs Lincoln County is here for you. Our center is fully equipped and expertly staffed to help you with your employment and workforce needs. Stop in and see us at 998 East Main Street in Newark or call us at 740-670-8700.
Welcome back to episode 21 of For the Love of Lincoln County. I'm your host, Jamie Wright of Wright Davo Insurance. And this month, so it's October, we're feeling the fall. I know a lot of people are really digging into their goals for next year and kind of where they're headed. And this month's topic is the Enneagram. So balancing centers of intelligence. Now, what better person than Mary Henton to come and talk to us today about the Enneagram Stances. Now, Mary is with Mary Henton Coaching and Consulting. Also Impact Now. I'm going to have you introduce that here in just a little bit. But I do want to introduce you or to everyone and everyone to you as well. Just want to read a little bit of your bio here. Mary brings 30 years of education and leadership experience to her coaching and consulting practice. She's developed her career to helping individuals and organizations achieve personal and professional goals. She holds a BA in English and Education from Gordon College and an MED in Learning and Development from Harvard University. She's an associate certified coach with International Coach Federation and in the process of earning her Enneagram certification through the Enneagram Institute of Ohio. I didn't even know that was a thing until I read your bio.
It is.
That's pretty cool. So thanks so much for coming on and talking with us about this today. It's really, really popular right now, the Enneagram.
It is, yes. It has been growing in popularity, as you say, for some time.
And we'll dig into that too a little bit too. You and I had a chance to kind of connect and talk a little bit about the Enneagram before we started. And I was enlightened by a couple different things that I'm sure a lot of people are not. But first, let's define what the Enneagram is. So this is by definition. The Enneagram is a system of personality which describes people in terms of 9 types, each with their own motivation spheres and internal dynamics. And then you have defined a wisdom way to uncover our true nature and live in our true selves. Now with that, I kind of wanted to talk about what the Enneagram is and what the Enneagram isn't. And you were able to give me your presentation on the Enneagram too. So I'm just going to read right from your presentation. The Enneagram is a journey and process, a way to understand and grow. It's about curiosity, understanding, and compassion. It's one way to understand and grow. It is not a solution, a way to type about excuses and blaming. The only way to understand and to grow. I love that too. That made it like super convenient and easier for me to understand. But go on and open up to us about just the basics of the Enneagram. Further explain how we can use that to uncover and live in our true selves.
Well, first of all, thank you for this opportunity to be here to have this conversation.
Absolutely.
And thank you for laying out those pieces of information. As you quoted from the information there, yes, this is just one way to understand self based on understanding our motivation. What is our core motivation? What is it that drives each of us?
Yeah.
And the one of the things that I think is important about the Enneagram is that it is a process. It's multi-layered. Mm-hmm. It's a very rich wisdom, and it is a journey.
A journey.
Yes. It's not just simply, okay, I'll fill out this form and I'll find out what the answer is, and there it is, and here's how I define myself for the rest of my life. Not at all.
That's kind of what I learned when we first talked.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So dive into that a little bit for us and trying to interpret how it's a journey.
I'll talk from my own experience. How about that?
Yeah, perfect. Because I'm going to use myself as an example too.
So in my early days, thinking about and learning about the Enneagram, first of all, I waited for a number of years to spend any time in it. I had was with people, friends, colleagues that had been studying and learning about and applying the Enneagram, and I just avoided it for a number of years. When I finally decided to dig into it, um, for one thing, it took me quite a while to figure out where of these 9 types
Mhm.
I tend to fall, um, because there are similarities across some of the types, and that's the language that's used. And it all is about what is motivation?
Mhm.
How is it that I see the world?
Mhm.
And how I see the world or how I present myself may look very similar to somebody else, but what is driving me is different. So it took me a while to figure out exactly wh- where am I? What is my motivation? What is my drive? And so that took some thinking, some honest reflection,
Mhm.
some conversation with my Enneagram teacher.
Mhm.
We had a number of conversations, and he would ask questions and kind of probe. And I was like, oh, well, yeah, that, but I'm not really sure. And sometimes this. So that was one step. The other, once I began to see that, once I recognized where I was, then it has been. So what about that can be healthy? What about that can be unhealthy? When is it that I lean into or express that motivation, that type that's not very healthy and
Hmm.
maybe gets in the way of my relationships?
Yeah.
Where is it that I can recognize when that's happening and I need to shift a bit?
Yeah.
Um, I'm right now in this. You mentioned my this certification program that I'm in. One of the classes that we had to do with a whole area of the Enneagram known as subtypes. I'm just barely learning about that, and that has gives us a whole other set of layers of understanding self and how am I operating. So journey, it's always a path and some more places to go and lots to learn along the way.
Yeah. I mean, everything's a journey,
Right,
right?
it is.
Right. So the Enneagram, though, right now is like all the rage. There's Instagram page after Instagram page, kind of what you were talking about, learning what's not maybe so healthy. Just this morning, one of the Enneagram people that I follow, um, because it's Halloween, it's like, what's spooky about my Enneagram type? So I'm like, you know, but the interesting part of that is like I can read every one of them and be like, that's me, that's me, that's me. So, kind of figuring out how to dig deeper into that is what we're going to get into. Because, you know, you can take a quiz online and I can learn, what number that I am. But after talking to you, it's a lot more than that. It's a lot more than that. So, I love the idea of the journey with the Enneagram and knowing yourself a little bit better. I mean, that's going to be a constant progression, I would assume. There's not like a time frame that you can put on that. You mentioned Enneagram teacher. Are
Mhm.
those prevalent?
Yes, there are. There are a number of teachers. The teacher that I've started with is David Bell. He's actually in Indiana.
Okay.
Um, the work that I'm doing this right now is through the Enneagram Institute of Ohio, and those are the 2 women who lead that. Connie Fraker and Lisa Buell.
Mhm.
So there are teachers all over. Yeah.
What do you do when you have sessions with them, or what is it that you guys do?
So they're teaching sessions. So they're usually in particular aspects of the Enneagram. Sessions with David have been where he tends. We were in a cohort, which was really helpful. So we were a group of I don't know, maybe 12 or 15 that were together over the course of 2 years and met about quarterly, either in person to person or online or combination. And each time it was a particular topic beginning to delve into to some aspect. So, for example, one of them was about stances and
Hmm.
about time and how does our type influence our stance and how we approach the world? How does it influence our understanding of time and our use of time?
Oh.
So that, for example, that was one topic. I mentioned one of the sessions that we just had in this course that I'm taking for some certification was about subtypes. which are 3 other layers that you put onto each Enneagram number to, again, further understand self and then how to engage with others who see the world differently and are of a different subtype.
Yeah. That's deep.
Yes,
That's a lot of work too.
it
A
is.
lot of reflection.
Yeah, and I find myself at sessions, taking notes fast and furiously, and then it's needing to go back and
Yeah.
digest and
It,
read and study.
well, it
And
would almost be like therapy, right?
yeah, it can be. I think that's important for a particular teacher to be able to facilitate that, so it
Yeah.
doesn't become that.
Yeah.
But people do use it in therapeutic settings. I do not. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a trained counselor of that sort. So.
Sure. Okay. Well, so what's different about the Enneagram versus other personality tests like Strengths Finder, anything like that? What's the difference?
I think one big difference is this recognition that we all, it's Ian Crone, I think, that uses the language of a spectrum. So even though there are 9 types,
Mhm.
there are flavors, there are aspects of the types that influence or that we see in ourselves. So we're not a rigid at one point on that circle, those 9 points on the circle or on the Enneagram and the diagram. So that's one thing. Strengths finders, I understand it, and haven't done strengths finders. So, and Myers Briggs I did years ago. So I'm not an expert at all. Those tend to, in my understanding and my little bit of experience, kind of pinpoint you. Here you are. This is it. It's
Right.
kind of static, and
Yeah.
that's that.
I would agree.
With Enneagram, each of us is a particular point on the particular number, particular point on that Enneagram. And so that does stay the same. However, how it expresses and how we lean into the subtype, as I mentioned, or how we lean in, we each have places that we go to in strength, places that we go to in stress, and that take us to other places on the Enneagram. And so there's that dynamism.
Yeah. I was
Dynamism.
just going to say, like, it just seems deeper. It's more, it's deeper than me saying, like, I'm a wooer or, whatever the case might be. It just seems like you can use these based on your personality and how you can define success, even. Like, that's hard for people, I think, too. So,
Yeah, the other thing I like about the Enneagram is being able to use it as a way to understand and help me better engage and be with others.
yeah. Yeah. I want to get
Whether
to
it's
that
in
too.
my personal life or whether it's in my work life.
So I said before, because I want to get into the triads
hmm
and the stances. I want to use me as an example, just based on the research that I've done on myself. Okay, so I think it just kind of gives people a platform. Maybe that if you're not familiar with the Enneagram, or if you were like me and kind of new to it, but still like to read about yourself, by all counts, I am a type 3 with a 5. So, so let's use that as an example. So we're going to talk about the triads. There's 3, obviously triad: doing, feeling, and thinking. And I just want to give people a basis of what that is. So your doing triad, you have a strong gut, you're purpose focused, practical, alert to power and control. Your feeling triad is intense emotions, able to read or understand others, alert to others' needs, affirmation or acceptance, highly relational. Really liked that one. Thinking triad, gather knowledge and info, think ahead, plan, strategize. Life is an ongoing SWOT analysis too. Like I was like, yeah, whoa. So the Enneagram type 3, 7, and 8 fall into the aggressive stance too, and we'll get there. As the name implies, the aggressive stance, these types are bold, assertive, and carry a strong energy with their presence. So sometimes you read some of these things and you're like, wow, yeah, that explains me. Like, I feel so validated. Someone understands me and gets me. So using me as an example, let's talk to us about these triads, kind of explain what they do and how they are. Just if you guys can picture, and I don't know if you can see this, but there is a circle, and in the circle is the 3 doing, thinking, feeling triad. So obviously these could be more of a percentage in one area than another, or explain how that works.
No, so just think of that as simply a diagram.
Okay.
It's not as if you're, 20% here and 30% there.
Okay.
So if we think about, excuse me, the fact that as human beings, there are 3 centers of intelligence, 3 ways that we experience and process the world.
Okay.
All of us, we all have it. Head, thinking, imagining, planning, taking in here, that sort of head, spending time in the head, if you will. Feeling or heart, okay, it's aware of emotions, experience. So somebody who may go into a room and just kind of right away be able to read and feel like there's a lot of tension here, for example, or wow, this is really comfortable. I'm being very simplistic, okay?
Yeah.
And then there is knowing through our body, through our gut. And in fact, there's a great deal of research that's been unfolding over the last 5-7 years about the fact that there's what's called an enteric nervous system in our gut that has more nerve endings than our brain.
Wow.
So, and that
believe
it's
it.
connected, obviously to to our entire body. So some people have a very strong what we call gut, right? Like, I just know what the right thing to do is. Others of us, like, I don't know, I kind of need to think. What's the pros and cons? Okay. So we each of us have all 3. There's a preference. We each have a preference where that's kind of our default. It's like that's where we go to. And a second one that is supportive. I'm a 4. So very strong in the feeling. I'm smack dab in the middle of that. Also, thinking is a supportive piece. So I kind of go back and forth between experiencing life, understanding life through emotions and feelings, also thinking about it. That third center of intelligence is one that we ignore, misuse, distort. Different teachers and different writers use different language. I kind of go between distort and misuse.
Oh.
So for me, for example, I am not initially or quick to understand what my body's telling me, especially, I've been learning to in my last number of years, but certainly in the earlier part of my life, say in my 20s and 30s, very much head feeling. If you ask me, so what's your gut telling you? I'd have to, well, I don't really know.
Yeah.
The other side of that is it's also a part of what I could do that I tend not to do. So I can spend a lot of time imagining, planning, thinking, figuring out, researching, wondering. But when it comes to taking action, I have to kick myself in the butt. I have to remind myself. And that's honestly a very practical way that the Enneagram's been helpful for me. When I realize, you know what? I've been spending a lot of time just kind of mulling this one over. It's time to do something about it. Others, an aggressive stance, for example, I have a friend who, and also one of my kiddos who are 8s, very much about doing. That's the strength of what's going on there. Also pretty good at thinking, can plan, figure out what things to do. Hard to get to understand feelings and emotions. And also then hard to appreciate or give other people time for that. Initially, initially or without growth. Does that make sense?
Giving them time to feel the feelings?
Right.
Okay.
And also part of, again, as we think about the Enneagram as a journey, so in the early phases, and the early phases for me is a 4. Understanding, feeling, thinking. Part of my growth and my journey is paying attention to, okay, I need to move. I need to take action. For my friend who's an 8, one of the things that she has to pay attention to, and she has been and through her adult years, is, wow, I need to allow time for people to have their feelings, their emotions. I can't just bulldoze over. So that's, I don't know, is that
Oh my gosh,
Explain a little bit.
that's so good. It's so good though. So I know that. So is there anything different? So I know we talked about the triad and the stances here. Is there anything, you know, because there are three different stances, right?
Right. So
Three.
yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
And the stances are identified by which of the centers of intelligence one misuses or distorts.
Oh.
So if we go back, let's go back to the triads.
Okay.
So 8, what are known as by numbers as 8, 9, and 1s are in the gut, in the body triad. That's their strength. 2s, 3s, and 4s, and I'm a 4. We're in the feeling triad. That's our strength. 5, 6, and 7s in the thinking triad. That's their default. That's their strength. Okay. Again, and each one of them also has a secondary one. But as I said, there's that third one which we ignore or distort. And so that's where the stances are. And those are different sets of 3.
Oh, based on what we distort.
Based on what we distort or misuse.
Okay.
So for me,
Yeah.
so 4, 5s, and 9s.
Okay.
4, 5s, and 9s are distort doing. They're primarily feeling and thinking people. And if you were to look on, I don't know, we should have too bad we didn't have a big diagram and I could have pointed out, right? Could have pointed out. So 4s and 5s are right there at that thinking and feeling. A 9 actually sits in the middle of that gut, that doing triad, which is kind of interesting. And yet 9s misuse the doing. It's even though they're smack dab in that triad, they distort the doing. 9s tend to get involved in doing all kinds of things, but not really what needs to be done. I've heard it described as if you were to put in front of a 9 sticky notes with all the tasks that need to be done in a week, they'd just start doing them. They wouldn't think about, okay, what's priority? How could I group these together? It's just like, okay, I'll do this one now.
Yeah.
Do this one now.
And that's the distortion.
That's the distortion.
Okay.
For me, I can spend all my time thinking about and feeling. And, that's really difficult when you're building a business.
Yeah.
You have to get your butt out of the chair.
Yeah,
you have to do something, right?
You have to walk the walk, right?
Right.
You can't just talk it.
Right, exactly.
Which I'm like that. Let's just talk about it. Let's talk about your feelings. I'm here for it. That's so interesting.
So then, and so we're also known, in that stance is considered, the language is withdrawn, because also the stance, another way to understand the stance is how we engage when there are challenges, or how we engage to get what we want. So 4, 5s, and 9s tend to withdraw. If I'm feeling under stress, and it has not to do with introvert or extrovert.
Right.
Okay. But if I'm feeling under stress, I kind of want to figure it out on my own. I tend to want to go in. Enneagram has taught me, has revealed to me, even though I sort of knew this somehow in there, Enneagram has taught me that that's when I find myself doing that much of withdrawing, I may be in an unhealthy place, and that's exactly when I need to reach out to others or engage with somebody else.
Oh my gosh. I had no idea.
So 3, 7s, and 8s are known as considered aggressive, and not aggressive because they're, attacking people, but that's how people often experience them. Okay. So my friend who I mentioned is an 8. Yeah. People often experience her. One of my kiddos often experience her, and especially women who are 8s experience them as being pushy, aggressive. Really what it is they know what they want. They know how to go out and get it. And that's what they do. Okay. And again, the center that is distorted or misused is the feeling center. 3s, even though they're right in the middle of that feeling center, if we were to look at that diagram again, they know their feelings, but they kind of put them off because they don't have time for them. They get in the way. Okay. They get in the way of, I need to succeed. I need to do a good job. I need to, to appear.
Mm-hmm.
I need to
So-
show up and do very well.
Mm-hmm.
I need other people to see me doing very well.
Mm-hmm.
I can't allow my feelings to get in the way right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that they don't have them.
Yeah.
Kind of tend to put them up.
Well, you'd shove them under the rug, and then one day they just boil over.
And there you go.
That would be my distortion then, right?
That's right.
Okay.
And then 1, 2s, and 6s
Uh-huh.
are known as dependent. And in that sense, that word is used because their approach to life, their approach, especially when there are challenges or difficulty, they tend not to trust their own thinking,
Mm-hmm.
and the thinking is what's distorted. They tend to rely on and look at what other people are doing or saying or directing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So they have a hard time with decision making.
Especially under stress.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, especially in those situations. Yeah. Or knowing or using the thinking to make wise decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh man, that explains so much,
Does it?
though. It really, really does. So, and I want to ask you too, because obviously these things can help us. I mean, it just kind of helped me understand a lot of different things. Well, we can dive into that on another show. But talk to us about how to use this as a business strategy. How can all of us help this professionally? I mean, everybody has client struggles,
Mm-hmm.
or what about workshops or whatever?
Right,
How do we-
exactly.
How do we use this?
Well, if I think about it in terms of myself, when
Mhm.
I'm coaching, especially if I'm working on a one-on-one, if I have a sense, well, before I answer that further, let me just make this statement. Can never claim or identify somebody else's number. It's a job for each of us to do ourselves. Because even though somebody may present a certain way, again, it's always about what's the internal drive or motivation. Okay.
Okay.
So let me put that aside. It's never fair to say, oh, I think that person's a 5. I think that no.
Okay.
There may be some behaviors that you may kind of wonder, but you got to put that one aside
Mhm.
because I don't know what's going on inside the other person, right?
Mhm.
But what I can identify or experience is somebody feels, because I'm about feels aggressive,
Mhm.
strong, let's
Mhm.
get this done. Yeah, they may be a 3, 7, or 8, most likely, but I'm not going to go there. But that's what I experienced. So, as somebody working with that person, I know it's okay for me to be direct.
Yeah.
I know it's okay for me to interrupt that person politely, right? I know that it's okay to call that person out directly and
Mhm.
say, wait, 2 days ago you said this.
Mhm.
You're telling me you changed your mind?
Yes.
Whereas if I'm working with somebody, excuse me,
You're fine.
if I'm working with somebody who I experience similar to me is maybe withdrawn,
Uh-huh.
I'm not going to push quite aggressively. I'm going to put it in terms of, and I might use the language of feeling. So tell me, what's going on inside about this?
Mhm.
2 days ago, you said X. Today, you're saying Y.
Mhm.
Can you tell me a little more about that?
Mhm.
Whereas with you, I might say, hey, 2 days ago, you said X. What's going on? How come you're saying Y?
Mhm.
So a different approach. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I go back to my friend who's an 8. I know that when we're collaborating or working together, I don't have to worry about apologizing. I'm really sorry, whatever. It's just, here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I think we should do. If she, the same way, is direct with me, I don't take it as an affront.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you don't have to read into it, so to speak.
exactly.
Yeah.
So that's just from practical,
I love that.
my own experience.
How long does it take you to learn your number?
Golly, it took me, I'd say about 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So not just a quick 5-minute online quiz.
It wasn't for me. Some people are able to identify really quickly.
Yeah.
And I'm not a proponent of quizzes. I'm not saying that there's not a place for them. And it is a way for people to get introduced.
Mhm.
I also know plenty of people who've taken quizzes and came up with a certain number. And then as they were spending more time in the Enneagram, began to see, man, it's not really who I am. I'm really this.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm. Or you could be, you could have like a major and a minor, right? You could have
well, the general Enneagram wisdom is that you've got your number, and then there's language about wings. You can kind
wings.
of lean into the next number on one side or the other. And I have not dug into wings. I'm not prepared
Oh, that's
to talk with
okay.
any knowledge about that other than the general concept and
Well,
aware of my what I think my own wing is. But
it's funny because I said major and minor, like in a degree, and then the term is type and wing. So it's interesting.
but what does also happen, another way that it's dynamic, is that each number goes to another number in stress and another number in security. So that's where we might experience aspects of another number.
Yeah, that just blew me away. That makes sense then.
So, for example, as a 4 in stress, I will go to a 2. And that can kind of help me because a 2 is generally a little bit more outward focused.
Hmm.
So, it helps me to kind of pay attention and and look outward as opposed to withdrawing.
Hmm.
Um, so, yeah, those are other aspects of the
Yeah.
Enneagram.
Wow, that's really cool. So we talked about professionally. A lot of these things can be attuned to your personal relationships. But what I find myself doing, and maybe you can explain this to me a little bit, is that I want to know or figure out my husband's Enneagram type and number. Because there's a lot of language on how to
Mhm,
communicate with
mhm.
people personally if you know their Enneagram type. So I'm constantly like, okay, well, there's mine. Now let me read all the other ones and see which one he falls into. Because they'll say like, this is what you fear, or this is what you love, or trying to figure out how to adapt inside of a personal relationship. Give me some advice there, Mary, in terms of what I should maybe not be doing, or how to pursue that. Because I'm sure that a lot of people have that question. If I understand your Enneagram type and your personality and your motivations and your fears, then I can more easily relate to you on an intimate level. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I think the best way is to ask the individual to, hey, would you be willing to take a look and read these descriptors? I'm just curious.
Okay.
See if any one of these resonates. Um, Suzanne Stabile is somebody that I read her materials, and she has a great podcast that I enjoy that is, I think, helpful. And she, well, it is her book, but but I've heard other people talk about how they've used her book, which she wrote with Ian Cron, just to give them the book, just read, see which ones resonate. I know with people in my own family,
Hmm.
that's what has worked. It's like, just take a look, see if anything, what kind of resonates for you. You don't have to buy into it any more than that.
Hmm.
Uh, If you want to, fine, and we can go further in the conversation. Great. At least, would you be willing to do this?
Yeah. Okay. So they kind of have to be.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is, it's like anything. The more we live out in our own lives, and so that maybe the other person becomes curious or is asking. Um,
Yeah.
so I notice that there's some kind of change in you, or I'm hearing you use some different language.
Hmm.
Can you tell me about that?
Hmm. Well,
We,
we all try to lead by example, right?
right.
Living out our examples.
And we can never make somebody else do what we want them to do.
Right. That's key. Write that down. Make note. You cannot make anybody do what you want them to do.
Except maybe pick up a 2-year-old and move the 2-year-old from point A to point B. But
Yeah.
beyond that,
Well, they still kick and
they
scream.
still, right,
They
exactly.
still kick and scream. So this is all. This has enlightened me quite a bit. I had no idea about the distortion piece and where we kind of go to in times of stress. So that's really good information. Um,
There's,
Go
okay,
ahead.
I'm sorry. There's another piece about stances that
Yeah.
you and I didn't talk about. I'll just raise it up, and if you want
Yes,
to
please.
dig into it now, fine. And that is that the stances also have a relationship to our understanding and our approach to time.
Oh yeah, you did mention this
Did I mention
time
that? Okay,
piece. That.
and that can be helpful in a work or a group situation.
Mhm.
you want to go there?
Yes.
Okay.
Go.
Okay.
I'm very curious.
Okay. So again, based on stance,
Mhm.
there's a particular orientation to time, present, past, and future. And again, just as with the centers of intelligence, we have a primary, we lean into a second, and we kind of ignore the third. The same thing happens with time. So aggressive stances, 3, 7s, and 8s, are very much future oriented.
Mhm.
The second one that they lean into is present, and then past is the one that they tend to ignore. So in a team or work situation, let's say, we've got a problem at work here, we've got to figure this out. Somebody in an aggressive stance is very likely to go right to, we need to do A, B, and C. We need to get here. Here's what I'm going to do tomorrow.
Mhm.
I want to call so-and-so today.
Mhm.
Okay, right away,
Mhm.
taking action. And also a little bit with the present. Not so inclined to think about, so we had this situation about 2 years ago. What did we learn? What's something we can bring back? The withdrawn stances, 4, 5, and 9,
Mhm.
our preference is the past. We jump from there to the future. That's where we go next. And then present kind of makes sense, not wanting to do, right? Present is what we tend to ignore. So we're in that problem in our office. You're going to, hey, I want you to make this phone call today. I'm going to write this email. I may be the one who says, hey, wait a second,
Mhm.
but didn't we have that conversation just a month ago? Like, and didn't the other group? What about that other business? Didn't they? Okay, so I'm going back.
Mhm.
Can be frustrating, perhaps, right?
Or good.
Could be, right?
Yeah.
And then the 1s, 2s, and 6s, those who are dependent,
Mhm.
their preferred place in time is in the present,
Mhm.
then to the past, and then future kind of gets at the bottom. So they are ones who are paying attention to what's going on right this minute that needs to happen. How sometimes people describe them as they may be arranging the chairs on the deck of the Titanic. So they're okay. Let me get coffee right now because we have to fill up the coffee pot. Yeah, I'm really. Don't we have an appointment at 2 o'clock today? Okay, sort of focused there
Mhm.
as opposed to being willing to jump into planning
Mhm.
for the future or reflecting on the past. So in a group situation, just being aware that those 3 approaches to time can be helpful in some of that negotiating, some of that planning, some of that work together.
Wow.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
So, so tell me this, riddle me this. If let's say you have one of each in a professional group setting and you have this task at hand, wouldn't that be a benefit?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
it is, and that's what I'm saying. Being aware of that. It's when we're not aware of that,
Yeah.
and I might get frustrated because wait a second, I feel like you're rushing ahead too far, too fast, too fast.
Yeah.
But if I can remind myself that there are 3 ways of understanding and working with time,
Mhm.
whether I know the Enneagram or not,
Mhm. Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Just in general,
Yeah.
that some people tend to think ahead and they're jumping there. Some people tend to stay in the present. Some people tend to stay in the past. Okay, so yeah, paying attention to all 3 of those
Mhm.
within our working group is important.
Mhm. So, and that all kind of goes for full circle into, how this can help you professionally and how
Hmm.
it can help you personally, just kind of understanding the 3 different stances,
Hmm.
the 3 different triads, and how everybody's a little bit different, how they process information and how they report
Hmm.
different information or feelings too. So I
Hmm.
love that. Now, if somebody wanted to dive into this, where would they get started?
Well, if you're a podcast person, there are lots of podcasts out there. Suzanne Stabile has one. Um, um, there's another one called Fathom. Ian Cron has one. And if
Okay.
you'd like, I can put together a list and
Yeah, we
make that
can.
available to folks.
Yeah.
If you're a person who likes to read, there are a number of authors, a number of books. Rizzo and Hudson have written books. Their material is considered you know, foundational, very foundational. I mentioned Suzanne Stabile.
Mhm.
Her work is very accessible. Rizzo and Hudson's stuff is a little bit, not dense isn't the right word, but they get into details
Mhm.
pretty quickly.
Mhm.
Suzanne Stabile's stuff, I think, is just very accessible to folks. And she's written a book also about the road between us. So it's a book geared to what about
Yeah,
working.
personal relationships.
So those are two. Ian Cron is another person who has written. Bernice Chestnut, yes, Chestnut. Helen Palmer. So those are some authors.
Wow.
Again, I can put
Wow.
some if
There's a
you'd
lot.
like. I can put some
Yeah,
together. So yeah,
there's a
and
lot.
yeah, there is a lot. There's the Enneagram Institute, Ohio. There are several chapters. There's one here in Ohio, and my own teacher does a number of workshops that are available online and in person.
Oh, cool.
And he does not have any publications. Another author is a guy named Drew Moser, and it's actually from his stuff that I've learned about some of this time and how time influences or how stances
Mhm.
influence time.
Mhm.
So
So, so two more questions for
yeah.
you. Why did you decide to further your learning in this?
Mm. Somehow, there's not one event or one catalyst, but somehow in the time when I was in a transition time, and as I say, I had been a number of friends and people I'd worked with had been using the Enneagram, been studying it for some time, and just thought, you know what? As I'm in this time of transition and my own discernment, I wonder if this is something that could be of some assistance, some help to me. And so that's that's all it was.
And it has been, I'm
It
assuming.
has been. It has been.
Well, good.
And my first exposure actually was going to a workshop.
Okay.
So
So it seems like it's very available and
yeah.
accessible if you guys want to get started into that. Now, I ask everybody, every one of my guests, what's your biggest life hack?
Biggest life hack.
I know everybody gets, I always stump people. Mine's the Kroger app. Okay. It
Oh.
saves me, the click list saves me 2 hours of my life every week. That's
Hmm.
that's my best advice to anybody.
What bubbles up is a phrase that I learned years ago, and it is, "What's the next right thing?"
Oh, I love this.
And that's particularly helpful for me as somebody who doesn't
I
like
know.
to do.
I love it.
But yeah, and even so, when I'm confused or overwhelmed, it just remind myself, "What's the next right thing?"
Mhm.
Helps me to get unstuck.
No, that discernment's hard though too. There's lots of tools on helping you get to the next right thing too as well.
Right?
Love it.
Yeah. But sometimes
so
the next
good.
right thing is just, you know what? I need to wash the dishes.
Yes. It's as simple as I love that. Nobody said that one before, and I absolutely love it. It's probably my favorite besides the Kroger Click List app. So
So
tell everybody where they can find you because you do offer coaching and consulting for businesses.
yes, I do.
Websites?
So my website is my name. It's maryhenton.com.
Okay, easy enough.
Yep. And I've been in conversation with a friend, colleague, about perhaps offering a series of workshops on the Enneagram,
Uh-huh.
actually using Suzanne Stabile's materials. So if that needs to come to fruition,
Mhm.
here, the action, right?
Mhm.
So I will be, there will be some information on that
Okay. Oh, yay.
coming
That's
up.
awesome.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, Mary, thank you so much for being here and sharing and enlightening me for sure. I'm so sure that you've helped a lot of other people out there. So thanks for your time today. You guys,
Thank you.
yeah, be sure to join us next month on For the Love of Licking County. Thank you.